All right, now for today's Tanya. Just had to get that out of my system. We're doing Tuesday, chapter 19 in the Chayenu, page 83. If you have the Steinsaltz Tanya, that would be on page 463. Okay, in the previous chapter, the author of the Tanya explained that when it says living a life of Torah mitzvahs and God centricity is very near to you, it's because it's already in your heart already. You don't have to do anything. This love, this hidden love, is at the core of us. And we explain how, because you have the chachma, you have the antenna. Chachma is not wisdom, it's the receiver to that which is above us. So that came to us as inheritance from our forefathers. So now he's going to explain how this love plays out when you're threatened with being severed from God, as well as how the love will contain an element of awe. So two questions remain. What is the nature of this love? And two, how does the fear of God incorporate in it? We said it's love. So there's also awe. There's fear. Seemingly you have this like subconscious antenna to God that makes you love God. Well, let's explain what's the nature of it. And two, that's only half of the emotions. Where's the fear part? To further elucidate the nature of the hidden love, it's necessary to clarify the meaning of the verse. It says in Proverbs, Shlomo Melech said, the neshama of man is a candle of God. The soul of man is a candle of God. What does that mean? This means that the souls of Jews, who are many times the word Adam, many times in the Tanakh refers to the Jewish people, is their soul. Their soul is like a flame of a candle. What's the flame of a candle? The nature of a flame is always to flicker upward. For the flame of the fire intrinsically seeks to part from the wick that holds it and to unite with its source above, and the universal element of fire, which is in the sublunar sphere, as explained in Eitz Chaim. I'm sure science explains, gases want to go, whatever the case is, but the flame is built that it rises upwards. It wants to connect to the above, to its source above. Although, thereby, if it does leave the wick, then there's no flame, right? It has a death wish, so to speak, the flame. It wants to go up, leave the wick, but then it can't exist. So if it leaves the wick, it'll be extinguished and would emit no light in here below. It'll lose its sense of self. And even above, when it goes up and it gets absorbed into whatever the source of it is, its identity would be lost within that of its source, right? Like it's a lose-lose proposition. It'll lose what it has, and even if it'll be part of the bigger source, it'll have no distinction. So it also won't be in existence. And yet, this is what it's an inanimate object, fire, but this is what it desires. This is how the built-in system is, that it desires by nature to strain upward, looking like it's almost like, a conscious desire. So just same way we palpably see how a flame flickers upward to attach to its source, even at the expense of its existence, so too the neshama, the soul of a Jew, and also the levels of ruach and nefesh, meaning all levels of the soul of the person, naturally desires and yearns to separate itself and depart from the body and to unite with its origin and source in God. Blessed be He, who is the fountainhead of all life.
Amen.
Even though it will become null and naught, and its identity would there in its source be completely nullified, just like the flame, it would lose its independent consciousness, and it at best would be nullified and subsumed into the source, with nothing at all remaining of its original essence and self. Yet this is its will and desire by nature. This is the irrational desire of the soul. Just to point out that usually say nature, you're talking, it's like a lower term. Nature's like, it's no brains, it just does this. right? It's below brains. It's just like brainlessly does this thing by its nature. Nature is an illogical um, explanation. It's like, this is the way it is. Why? Because. But here it's used in a positive sense. Nature is an applied term for anything that is not in the realm of reason and comprehension. It could be below understanding. It could be above understanding. Here too, the inference of the word nature is not that the soul's will and desire is not based on reason, knowledge, and intelligence that can be understood. It's saying that it's not limited to a logic that's propelling the soul to want to flicker upward. Rather, it's above any level of logic, even soul logic, and beyond the grasp and comprehension of rational intelligence. For this nature is the soul's faculty of chachma, going back to what we said yesterday. Chachma, which is the highest element of our intellectual comprehension, that is the receiver for things not yet understood by us or cannot be understood by us. And that is wherein the light of the blessed Ein Sof, the infinite light of God, abides. So now we explained the nature of this love. It's like a flame trying to go up, and that's why it's so obsessed with staying connected to God. It says in the Steinsaltz in the sidebar, just let me give me a second. So he says in the Steinsaltz Tanya, that every rational explanation of human phenomena always returns in one way or another, directly, indirectly, to the ongoing existence of the self. On page 468, reading the middle of the page. This explanation can also be applied to the performance of the mitzvot, as well as to the relationship between man and God. They are the result of the yearning of the self to grow to broader and higher realms. So you say, like, a person wants to expand themselves. Maslow's pyramid of needs, right? He said the top of the pyramid is self-actualization. Like the base ones is like food, water, shelter. Then above that is like love and like whatever. And then the top is self-actualization. Everything ultimately comes to this, like the self. But there's a phenomena that stands in directly against that, opposition to that, which is this yearning of the divine soul for self-annihilation without explanation. And the manifestation is when it comes into, to martyrdom. Martyrdom is against survival. It's against self. It's not rational. And okay, story of the Alter Rebbe. There's a famous line we quoted. We quoted a saying of Rabbi Shneur Zalman, the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, that he would sing, this is on page 469 in the sidebar, that when he reached a state of dveikut, in prayer, of attachment to God, he would sing spontaneously, Rabbeinu Shalom, Master of the universe, I do not want your Eden. I do not want your world to come. I want only you. His personality comes through in this story as a man who could reach the highest levels of ecstasy. It says, interesting to note, like, so it was the Alter Rebbe into like achieving ecstasy or the opposite? It says an example, um, he got very lost in prayers and high levels of ecstasy. So even though, you know, the Alter Rebbe is very logical, he's a very Chabad, his intellectual understanding of God to some degree, you can't divorce his ecstatic personality. It says they would line his study with pillows because he would pace and he'd pace so much he would hurt himself. He'd lose himself in prayer. So he had a very ecstatic, which is really a very different, a non-Chabad type of Chasim. It's very, other Chasim are more emotional, ecstatic. But he had that element to him as well. But you have to understand his whole thesis. This book is not the work of a cold intellectual fashioning of a theological structure, but it's based in the self-restraint of a man whose nature is not at all in line with this structure. In a sense, the challenge of such a person is not to reach a state of exalted inspiration, but rather to prevent his soul from leaving the body, to remain in the world and not like Elijah the prophet, leaving in a storm wind. For a person of this type, life in this world is a constant struggle to be grounded, not a struggle to be elevated. This personal, open, overabundant awakening led the author of the Tanya to adopt a certain flexibility and sense of distance in this work. At times, one gets the impression the author relates to the most unworthy and the sinners of Israel as one would relate to creatures of entirely different species, as if they were foreign phenomena. Unlike, for example, his contemporary Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who starts with a very understanding of the burdens of lowly, sinful Jews, the author of the Tanya writes from an seemingly external perspective, not from an understanding that arises from personal experience, but the analytical gaze of an observer. It's as though he heard from others that such people, sinners, exist, and they have certain challenges, and he wants to create a framework that they can operate in. The point we just discussed about self-sacrifice, about the readiness to surrender one's existence and be absorbed into the divine source, and about the core of concealed love, was already apparent in himself. I'm not really getting the point here so much, but yeah, I'm not sure what it's so important to say. He's almost like he's a scientist about all types of Jews. His world was a different, his experience was really on a different plane. Like he lived in a very expiring, ecstatic sense of cleaving to God.
Wow. The reminiscent saying of Davin Avihu?
It's exactly this point. Despite he achieved Ratzoi, and that was you might even add that was his default. The tzaddik again. Remember, how do we define tzaddik in Chassidus Sofer Tanya? That there's an overabundance of awareness of God and love for God. I mean, details, but that's kind of what it is. So when there's love, you get some lovesick. You know, the fact that you have to have shuv, you have to stay down is that's for us. It's the opposite. Us, we're very grounded, and we want to achieve a little bit of yearning. He's yearning, and he has to put the brakes on to stay grounded. And I guess that's the point he's bringing the Steinfeld sidebar, that it's really coming from a very in a way, when he gives us advice in the Tanya, it's really objective in many ways. It's like bird's eye view. It's someone looking down, looking at people where they are, and really explaining what's going on.